all of this was designed to be signed off because Trump wanted something to say on Thanksgiving. Well, Thanksgiving's going to come and go without this being signed, surely. And with that, I suspect will be Trump's attention for the next wee while as well.
The other big story for us today that we've been keeping a real focus on is what happens next in Ukraine. US and Russian officials will meet today in Abu Dhabi. That's the latest in a long line of peace talks. Keir Starmer will host a Zoom call with the coalition of the willing. And there is set to be a statement in the House of Commons where the Prime Minister is expected to be pressed on what exactly the UK can do and is doing to try and ensure that Ukraine gets a fair deal if a deal is struck. William, I want to come to you first on this one because I know that you will have been in and around this kind of world before. You understand the moving tectonic plates. What can the UK realistically do in a situation where it appears that Donald Trump is driving a lot of the momentum on this deal?
Well, here the UK is doing pretty well at doing things, actually. All credit here to the government, in particular to Jonathan Powell, the National Security Advisor, because this has been a bit of a crisis over the last few days, where basically two business people have come up with a deal, one from the US and one from Russia, came up with what appeared to be a take it or leave it deal, which was clearly largely derived from the Russians. In fact, it was pointed out by many people that a lot of the language used could only have been translated from Russian. And so this is a Russian ploy. It's a Russian attempt to divide the US from Europe. So the response has been good because Britain, France, and Germany have then worked on an alternative set of proposals. It seems like that where the US and Ukraine in their talks have ended up in Geneva is closer to those, to the British, French, and German ideas. So there's a better peace plan on the table. Now, to do that with considering the US have so much leverage on this, actually for Britain, France, and Germany to do that shows we still have some good diplomatic, we do some good diplomatic footwork. Trouble is, we're pretty much wholly reliant on that. And I point out in my column today how much power is passing in the world away from Britain and Europe. But we're still good at it. So we're still influencing in the right direction. But overall, sorry to go on a bit, I don't think we're that much nearer ending the conflict. It is the Ukrainians will now, and Europeans have improved this plan. It will now be unacceptable to Russia. And so we're still a long way, I think, from a successful negotiation.
Kezia, do you think the country at large is still supportive of the UK giving Ukraine its full backing? I mean, one element of the reason why the government is spending a lot of money, it's spending a lot of money on defence, and that's really not something that most people will see the direct economic benefit of. Do you think the public support is still there for this continuation?
I do, and I think there's a decent amount of evidence for that when you look at some of the polling around support for Ukraine. It seems to me pretty steady and pretty high. What's more important than that, actually, is people also understand why it's important. They see the security of Ukraine as being directly related to their own security. It is an astonishing week, though, when you look at the difference between what was proposed in the first set of 28 points versus what we believe to be in the remaining 19. We were in a position where America were up for ceding ground to Russia that was currently Ukrainian, that they were going to cap the total number of military personnel, and also that they were going to agree to Ukraine never being in NATO. That is absolutely astonishing. And the volte-face in all of those 3 points almost overnight tells us, I think, as William has said, that we're very far away from peace. And all of this was designed to be signed off because Trump wanted something to say on Thanksgiving. Well, Thanksgiving's going to come and go without this being signed, surely. And with that, I suspect will be Trump's attention for the next wee while as well.
Yeah, I don't know how optimistic we can be. And we spoke to Yuri Sak, and he said, will the war be going on in a year's time? And he said, yes, it will. And I think that's probably still the right answer.
All right, we had a very good day today. I think we made a tremendous amount of progress, even from the last time I spoke to you, and I apologize for keeping you waiting, but there was more work to be done. We began almost 3 weeks ago with a foundational document that we socialized and ran by both sides, and with input from both sides. And one of the things that happens when you've been involved in this now for 10 months is you get a pretty good sense of what the priorities and the red lines and the important issues are for both sides. And so that allowed us to create a foundational document. We arrived here today with one goal, and the goal was to take is 28 points or 26 points, depending on which version as it continue to evolve, and try to narrow the ones that were open items. And we have achieved that today in a very substantial way. Now, obviously, like any final agreement, they'll have to be agreed upon by the presidents. And there are a couple issues that we need to continue to work on. But I think the report today is that I think today was worthwhile. It was very, very. It is probably the most productive day we have had on this issue, maybe in the entirety of our engagement, but certainly in a very long time. But work remains, and because this continues to be a working process, I don't want to declare victory or finality here. There's still some work to be done, but we are much further ahead today at this time than we were when we began this morning and where we were a week ago for certain. It evolved. This is a living, breathing document. Every day with input, it changes. There were some that involved equities or the role of the EU or of NATO or so forth, and those we kind of segregated out because we just met with the national security advisors for various European countries, and those are things we'll have to discuss with them because it involves them. So we sort of really focused on the ones that were bilateral in nature for the most part. So there are a couple, none of it insurmountable. I can tell you that the items that remain open are not insurmountable. We just need more time than what we have today. I honestly believe we'll get there. More of that to happen. So I'm not going to speculate or go into the details of any of the specific items in the latest version of the proposal because, frankly, by tomorrow or the next day, that may have evolved and changed further. And but I can tell you, I guess, that I feel very optimistic that we can get something done here because we made a tremendous amount of progress today. Well, today, and we've talked to him since, I think he's quite pleased at the reports we've given him about the amount of progress that's been made. Well, obviously the Russians get a vote here, right? So, I mean, look, we began from the early stage of this process with our understanding of the Russian position as had been communicated to us in numerous ways. At the State Department, we received numerous written non-papers and things of this nature, also verbally things they've discussed over time and so forth. So it was. No matter what we came up with today, obviously we now have to take what we come up with if we can reach that agreement with the Ukrainian side to the Russian side. That's another part of this equation. They have to agree to this in order for this to work. The deadline is we want to get this done as soon as possible. Obviously, we'd love it to be Thursday. We'd love to be. Ultimately, the important point today is that we have made substantial progress. We've really moved forward. So I feel very optimistic that we're going to get there in a very reasonable period of time very soon. Whether it's Thursday, whether it's Friday, whether it's Wednesday, whether it's Monday of the following week, we want it to be soon because people are going to, between today and the time we deal with this, more people are going to die. More destruction is going to happen. Our goal is to end this war as soon as possible, but we need a little more time. Clearly, I think we all recognize that part of getting a final end to this war will require for Ukraine to feel as it is safe and it is never going to be invaded or attacked again. So that's clearly something that has to be discussed. I think we've made substantial progress on that and other points, but I'm not going to get into the details today about all of those.
Would there be a call between President Trump and Zelensky?
I don't know. It's possible. I'm not sure. All right, guys. Thank you. Thank you.
Any concessions you're asking the Russians to make this the route, or is it just the Ukrainian?
How we can have influence on such productions who said
at the very beginning, we have our Sergeant Major of the Army. They and we and the United States Army. Probably, if I went back 20 or 30 years, have not sent our kind of top 4 people.
Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the Secretary of Defense, the Honorable Pete Hegseth.
Thank you all for being here today. I am Dan Driscoll, Secretary of the United States Army. We're just so incredibly proud of them. We are so grateful for them. And one of the things we told them and their colleagues is that we will stand with them as long as we need to get them back where they need to be.
Do you see more room for cooperation with South Korean arms?
That for both threats, this partnership that has lasted so many decades is vitally important.
News Agency. Thank you for inviting us here today, quoting me